And you're supposed to lick the bottle first. I forgot to tell you that part too. Anyways, welcome to another beautiful week in the great Rochester, New York. Well, we are worldwide. As we know, we have listeners all across the world, mostly in one other country. This week, I'm going to ask you to not smash like. Do not smash like. Do not subscribe. Don't do it yet. I want you instead to watch, listen. And if you find enjoyment in this episode, please show your appreciation by then subscribing and liking. I've got my OG cohorts here, Lavelle, Dan from the streets. I never introduced Austin. I just automatically believe Austin's. Everyone already knows him. Oh, yeah. So Austin on the ones and twos over there. I'm sure he has a picture of his thumb in there. There you go. We want to welcome you to today's politically correcting podcast, where we always share a drink over a lively conversation amongst friends. So, are we prepared?
Well, in the essence of Jose.
Hey.
I'm the only one not drinking it.
Right. You know, it's so funny. I was looking for the
Cheers.
Modelo's Negro.
What is that, the combination?
Why the Negro?
Yeah, right.
Well, it's a darker version, and in celebration of Black History Month.
Oh, it is Black History Month.
Yeah, the shortest.
That's probably why it wasn't on the shelves.
That's why it wasn't on the shelf. Yep.
Danny said, "No, you're not getting me this time.
Not this time.
Not this time."
So let's jump right into the articles, because I'm extremely excited to get into our guest, who Lavelle has yet to actually know who this person is or where this person is from. But we're making it as a special guest for you, Lavelle.
Oh, man,
because it's Black History Month. So this is all for you.
I enjoy surprises.
Let's get into the John Hopkins study, please. John Hopkins comes out with a study that states that the lockdowns were ill-founded and did little to limit COVID deaths. Where
do you start?
Did we know this already? Because I felt like Florida told us, Texas told us, North and South Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas,
Sweden.
You're just singing the song.
I am.
Yeah.
I can actually name the states in alphabetical order. I am so cool.
Yeah.
I am so cool. But here it is. Like, what do you say about John Hopkins? It's John Hopkins. You can't say nothing about that.
Well, given the fact that they were on the take from the beginning anyway by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and WHO and NIH and everybody else that pays Johns Hopkins University, if you're not getting any kickbacks from the philanthropists, you're really not doing your job as a university.
True. I guess.
But the shocking part.
Oh, there's a shocking part that you saw in this?
Yes.
Pray tell.
That from the beginning, the people that were saying this very same thing were conspiracy.
I had posted, tell me a conspiracy theory that was a conspiracy theory 2 years ago that is now shown to be proven positive. This is one of them. The next thing here, pull up the ivermectin one. Not that I'm a doctor, nor do we advise that, this is what you should be taking by any means. But Reuters here, it's not a far-right conspiracy theory website.
Mainstream.
Reuters ivermectin shows antiviral effect against COVID. I mean, how many times did the doctor say there's nothing in it that provides any evidence that it's an antiviral, right? And here it is.
All I got to say about that is it's easier to get fentanyl than it is to get ivermectin in New York.
Oh, yes.
That it is.
You talk about a problem.
Ooh. That it is. It's easier to get. It's easier to get freaking that than any kind of drug to help you if you were to get COVID, but don't want to go to hospital.
Right.
Like, hey, can you just send me home with something? No, you either have to stay overnight for 3 nights and we're going to charge your insurance company, or here's some ibuprofen. See you. Wish you the best. So those are two big articles that came in the past week that kind of just blew the lid on a lot of things in my life. I feel a lot of things that we've been talking about for quite some time.
Yeah.
That it wasn't us saying that it's true. We're just saying, hey, there's this information out there. We're providing that information. Yeah. It's up to you to decide, but this is the information that's out there. Stop silencing, stop censoring people just because they don't agree with what the narrative is.
Wait, you think people can decide what's true and what's not true? No. You think people can?
I think people should be able to.
They should be able to.
Even though they may not.
Can they though?
Yeah,
can they?
No, I think they absolutely.
God forbid you see something on the screen that you just like I wonder what happens when they see something flash on the screen that they just don't agree with. Do they get scared or angry?
Just twitch a little bit.
Like, oh my God.
They do like what Trudeau does with the truckers. Pull up the truckers
Oh.
episode here. Trudeau ran like a little bitch.
Trudeau is a
he came up with COVID
biatch.
and said, I have to now sit in my Biden basement and I
Come on,
can't
man.
come out and talk to nobody.
Come on, man.
He doesn't have Zoom capabilities. He can't meet with nobody through the interwebs. Like his cell phone has no data plan, like they say about black people and getting IDs.
Yeah.
Like this is where we're living, where a top freaking elected official can't come out of hiding to talk to these truckers and say, you know what? Let me listen to what the hell they gotta say. Because
no, why would he do that?
well, he says that they're the fringe. He said they are the fringe far extremists.
How dare you call a trucker fringe?
Until you see those overarching shots of the cities and there's thousands of people out
Right.
there.
Honking their horns like
You
crazy.
didn't
I don't
see that.
I don't quite like that.
He
but
doesn't subscribe to
Honking their horns?
okay. What? Oh, yeah, he was blackface.
You did the my
Trudeau
God.
did
Yep.
dress up
Was
in
he,
blackface.
did he say no? I was Aladdin. I was playing Aladdin.
Wow.
that's as dark as it gets too. He went
Yeah.
full blown.
And you know what's so crazy? Nobody talks about it.
No.
And he got reelected.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if the black folks in Canada are like as like, anti whatever. Like everything's racist and they probably just don't even know what it was. They're like, oh,
He probably didn't. And
Hey.
well, speaking of racism, since we're going to talk about this,
Oh.
let's bring up the Dolphins head coach.
Oh,
We talked about this fairly quickly.
Did
Who actually
on this.
did a stellar job this year.
The Dolphins did.
Yeah,
They were 9-8 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. They finished well.
But they didn't make it to the playoffs.
Yeah,
right?
but they were over 500.
Is that the minimum?
I'm a Jets fan, and I know Lavelle is too. So
Yeah.
we win in
I don't
4
care.
games. We're good.
Yo, Dolphins coach getting fired. They're all like black, white, don't matter. I didn't think nothing of it.
Austin,
Dolphins
you got
suck
that?
anyway.
I lost Austin on the Dolphins. The head coach. Yeah, that guy. Sorry. Yeah. So that one. So it was Tom Brady that he was allegedly supposed to speak with, asked by the owner of the Dolphins organization to say, hey, we're on this boat in the middle of the water. Tom Brady may be here. He's a free agent. Maybe have a conversation with him. Now, yes, I agree that is unethical. Would you have spoken with him?
Sure.
International waters, no laws, right?
Hell yeah.
Why is he snitching?
Because he needs to make. I feel like he needs to make a case because I've read the supporting evidence of why he's claiming racism.
Yeah,
I don't see it, but I wanted to get your input on it. Being one of 2 black men on this dais here,
as the
cleaning
spokesperson
streets.
for someone who's a brother.
Well,
the argument that he gave, like
Mhm.
he tagged on the racial stigmatism of being the angry black man, and the reason why I got fired is because they were making me do unethical things because I was I don't know.
But they didn't make him do it.
No,
He didn't do
no, he didn't. No, but again, maybe the when you are going to accuse someone of being racist, you better be 100% sure.
for real.
You have
And it has to be that they based it on the fact that they thought their skin was superior to mine. Like that, being a Latino, if I'm going to say that I'm going to claim racism, I have to truly believe that I'm not going to use Austin as an example.
Bro,
Somebody out there, this white guy out here believes that because of my skin tone, because I'm Latino, because my language, because of my accent, because of whatever that has to do with me being Latino, that he feels as though he is in a superior position based purely on his race.
Listen.
That to me is racism. There's biasness. There's prejudice.
Yeah. Bigotry.
There's a whole bunch of other things that are not that are not sexist. They're not, racial motivated.
Right.
It's just, hey, this is what I think about you. I think that you're a Bulls fan. That means,
well, just the thing that got me is how he can tap into the minds of what he's suspecting from. Yo, throw some games. I'll give you. First of all, 100. You only going to put 100,000 for
100,000 for every loss.
100,000, dog. I mean,
would you have done it?
Nah, man, it's not enough. It's not enough.
What?
No,
how
you
much-
can
how
because
much
you
was
can
it
make
now?
more.
Because when you get caught,
can make
when you
more
get
than that.
caught by your teammates and everybody else,
right.
you're done.
Okay.
So that shit better be some old. Well, he made me an offer. Because the NFL is rigged anyway. So
Right.
let's
so
not.
You
let's
don't
not-
subscribe to the
let's-
owner owns you.
Yeah, let's not act like this is this game is left up to chance. Patrick Mahomes looked like he had something riding on the game. Mr. I'm gonna throw the ball to the defensive end, but hey, you know what? He won me some money, so I appreciate the
And
rigging.
then in the end, that's all that matters.
That's all that matters, man. What are you gonna do? What's your solution? You're gonna
and you know what? He
destroy
was,
the NFL?
Flores there was in line
Well,
for
he's
the
trying to.
Chicago job, right? For the Chicago head coach job. I bet you he's not going to be now.
Oh, he's done.
Oh, definitely
He's
not.
about
He's going to go start something with Kaepernick.
He's going to be Kaepernick. He's
Yeah,
going to have
absolutely.
some ice cream in a couple.
Well,
couple months.
he brought in the what's his name, Brady thing.
Mhm.
He brought in the $100,000 for every loss thing.
How's that racist?
First of all, how's it racist? And
Yeah, how's it racist?
second, why
it's crooked?
You're grasping at straws at that point. Why
Yeah.
you're going down, dude? You had 3 seasons. You didn't make the playoffs.
Nope. Right.
You didn't do what the head coach wanted you to do. Let's
Nope.
be honest.
And your team was kind of talented. I ain't gonna lie. They were talented
Right.
on paper. They were,
Right.
they
were
were better
all
than the
right. So
Jets.
you didn't
Yeah,
do
but-
you didn't do your job.
Nobody needs to tell the Dolphins to lose.
No,
They really don't. They
It's
really don't.
they've been mediocre since Shula.
At best.
I mean,
Along
what are
the-
we doing, y'all? Stop it! And then all of a sudden, Chris Bosh, I'm gonna boycott the NFL
Chris Bosh,
because
shut up.
they didn't hire any black coaches.
That dinosaur.
He
Not
do
'cause
look
he's
like-
old.
He does look like the Raptor when he
Yeah,
was
he's a
there.
velociraptor.
That's true. Yeah, right.
Speaking of racism, let's bring up quickly the Whoopi Goldberg thing because I don't want to go too far into this. 'cause
I love this conversation because honestly, I can go real deep.
Wait.
I can
Do
go
you
real
mean-
deep.
Do you mean Karen Elaine Johnson?
no, what's that?
That's Whoopi Goldberg's
That's
real
her real name?
That's her real name.
Well-
Karen?
Yeah, well, the irony of all
Yeah.
of this is Goldberg is a Jewish
Right.
last name, but
Yep.
see, the thing is, you have to be careful when because both sides, black and Jewish, you say one thing, everybody loses their goddamn mind because someone says something, you say anything against Jews, well, you're 100% labeled anti-Semitic.
You can't say anything about
You
Jews.
can't say it. But you know
can't.
what? It's like the Republican Party, the right, they definitely use that. They use anti-Semitism in a lot of their, attacks, the same way the left does with the blacks, right? You say something with, within the against the blacks on the left. Oh, they're going crazy. They both play those cards. So with this situation, you got to look at what Whoopi said. In my opinion, I don't think she said anything that was racist because at the end of the day, when you look at the whole, religion itself, it's just a religion, not a race. That is a fact based off of Torah Jews who are 100% against, Zionist Jews, right? And within how they use
I don't
the religion.
know. This is where I can't speak on.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm going in deep, right? But again, you can look him up. I follow a rabbi named Yaakov Shapiro, and he talks about the difference between Jews who follow Torah and those who follow the Talmud and also are Zionist Jews. And he doesn't consider Jews as a race himself. It's
Okay.
a religion. Their job is to protect the religion itself, protect the Bible that they were given to by God. That's how they follow their religion. That's a fact. If you look into their religion, that is what they say. What Whoopi Goldberg said was definitely dumb,
Yeah.
completely dumb, but it's what she gets. This is the platform that you on the left set up.
But look at the article. What the article actually states here. Can you pull that down? The View co-host furious at
Yes.
ABC for suspending Whoopi.
Yeah.
So the left is upset at canceling someone for saying something that a race feels was inappropriate.
But that's
or
what they
people
set
think is
up.
Inappropriate.
This is your game.
That's what you asked for.
This is your game. We're just playing it.
Just playing it. We're just here. Speaking of people in another country that I don't know if you want to talk about. It's supposed to Ukraine. What the hell's going on over there?
Oh, want to be stuck.
This op-ed says Ukraine is a Europe's problem, not ours. So why is Biden wasting American energy on a fight that's none of our business instead of tackling the true threat from China? Go ahead, do it.
Well, China's threat is different. That's more subliminal. That's more propagandized. That's pretty much what we got right now. The whole they're a communist country. They love
really?
they love Marxists. They love Marxism. They follow the playbook. They know it. They know it. They know
That's
you
all
can
they're
defeat.
taught, though.
And
That's all they're taught.
then they created art of war. Like, what's the best way of defeating your enemy without even having to go to war?
I love it. I do love that book. I do recommend it.
It's right there. But
So-
we're just steady separating ourselves, hating each other. And
do you think this
fighting.
has anything to do with Biden's son?
Oh man, it has everything to do with them, man. They're doing their job. They are doing their job. What did Tesla call Biden? A wet puppet? Called him a wet sock puppet.
Yeah.
A wet sock
Yeah.
puppet. So
Oh man,
the wet sock puppet.
he's been
puppet is
going
doing his
hard
job.
on Biden. I've been loving every minute of it
I love it
because
too.
you know a lot of the left love him, and here he is talking about their leader.
Drink to that.
Right. So I have a bunch of other things. I'm hope we're going to be able to get into these like we did last time. You know how we were going into the conversation and just like flew right into it. I doubt that's going to happen, but I'm going to introduce our guest who Lavelle has yet to know.
He keep bringing me up, so this is going to be another one of these shows.
This is Melanie Below here. All right. She is the executive director of the Stop Abuse Program and founding member of the Rochester Regional Coalition Against Human Trafficking.
Oh, yes. That's what I'm talking about.
Arcat, right? Arcat for short.
Yep.
Arcat for short. Melanie, very much. Thank you very much for coming on and blessing us with your presence. So this is a topic. Sex trafficking has been a topic of our podcast for a long time, and we've been itching to have somebody on to come in to really give some insight into not only what's happening in our country, but specifically, what's happening around here, what's happening in our area right now. So let's talk to you. It says, you said that you're a founding member of ARCAT. What brought that upon you? What pushed you towards that?
I've been interested in advocacy for children's issues my entire adult life. And about 10 years ago, the movement around human trafficking really started to coalesce nationally and coalesce in this region. And it's just something I want to be a part of. When you care about children's issues and you care about this sort of thing, it's very hard to hear about this and want to ignore it. It also is very obvious to me that this is kind of the metastasized cancer of a lot of other things that go wrong. There's a lot more to human trafficking, to child trafficking than just traffickers. There's a lot that goes into these kids' lives that brings them to that place. And all of a sudden, the stuff that I'd been talking about for 10 years before, that so many other people had been talking about for 10 years before, nobody really cared. All of a sudden, people were caring about. So it was like, okay, I want to be part of this. I want to help bring some awareness and bring some manpower into the region as we talk about this. And so that was 9 years ago, and here we are now.
That's amazing. I appreciate that because it's something that almost affected us personally. We had my wife's godchild was taken off the bus by her mother, who has no capabilities of seeing her daughter without someone watching, and took her off the bus, got a ride, and disappeared. And it was like pulling teeth to get the help that we needed in order to find, what happened and where she went. And on top of that, she wasn't necessarily gone yet or missing because they have to be missing for 24 hours. So can you speak to that? Like, how do we change that part of it?
Yeah. So just to put this in some context. So most kidnappings nationally, if you look at numbers, there's a big mess of numbers about missing children, kidnapped children, and it's a very complicated set of numbers. There's a lot of kids who are missing. That's hundreds of thousands of kids a year. Most of that is not really a big deal. Most missing children are, some of them are kids who run away. They're normally found within 72 hours. Anytime you're at a grocery, you're at like Walmart, and some kid is doing what I used to do when I was a kid, and they're hiding behind the skirts in those round carousel things, hiding.
The absolute worst thing you could do as a child to a mother.
Yes,
or a
absolutely,
father.
absolutely. But then when I babysat, I knew exactly what the kid was doing because I used to do it. So it works. But yeah, that stuff. If they don't get found in 45 seconds and they're declared a missing child, and the police, that's a statistic. That's a missing child.
Mm-hmm.
Kidnapping is different. And the majority of kids that are kidnapped every year are exactly the circumstance you're talking about. They're taken by a relative who doesn't have custodial rights.
Right.
And people tend to think that that's okay. I mean, I work with a lot of domestic violence victims who experience that exact same thing,
Mm-hmm.
where they have an order that specifies X, Y, and Z, and that, they have to have the kid at certain times, and the other parent has to relinquish that child at certain times. And if the other parent doesn't do that, they call the police. They're supposed to call the police. They're told to call the police, and the police say, "Oh, whatever, he's with the other parent." So one of the things we need to realize is this is serious.
Yeah.
And this isn't, someone just loves their kid. No, that's not it. If you love your kid and you're capable of taking care of them, you can work that out in court.
Yeah.
If you're using custody as an act of war, which is usually what this is about, it's either someone is trying to, an abuser is trying to torture the other parent, or something like that, or some parent knows that the kid is being abused and takes them because they're not getting anything. I mean, it's two sides of a really, really bad coin.
Right.
Police and most people aren't used to thinking about it. Family courts aren't used to thinking about it, which is part of how we get into this, because, the police will say, take it up to family court. Well, family court is not available 24/7.
Right.
And even if you do, you modify a piece of paper that they're not paying attention to anyway. That's not terribly helpful. So there needs to be a lot more awareness about that. People need to realize that this is serious, that this is how most kidnappings happen, and it needs to be taken very seriously.
Yeah, she ended up flying across the country. She ended up in San Diego.
San Diego.
Stood the night in Detroit. Right? Had a layover in Detroit. I'm gonna tell you the story because I'm very this is crazy how the Lord works. I really do believe that the Lord works in mysterious ways. And I'm trying not to make this about me at all, but we had to take it upon ourselves, because if they're telling us that we have to wait 24 hours before we can say anything, or before we can initiate a missing child alert, to me that's crazy. You know how much you can do in 24 hours.
Yeah.
So we're out there on the streets. I left work. I said, I'm sorry, I gotta go. And we knew where she lived. We found out where she lived. We were broke into the house, legit broke into the house. I'm sorry if I'm gonna get arrested after this, but we broke into the house. She was living she was crazy, schizophrenic crazy. And you're talking about living on the floor, on the ground of a house with nothing else in it, living out of a bag. It was absolutely disgusting. And it was a receipt on the ground outside that had a McDonald's timestamp on it from around the time that if they were to have left school, went to McDonald's, grabbed a Happy Meal, whatever, maybe that they have a camera there. I went to McDonald's over on Manoa Avenue, asked them to see the cameras. While the lady goes to the back to look at the cameras, I see the vehicle that was in the video pull up to the convenience store right next door. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. The lady comes back out, says, I'm sorry, we don't see that vehicle here. I'm like, don't worry, I see it right there. We ended up following it, call the cops, a whole big old freaking search thing came. The cops never came. Literally, I had to call someone that worked at 911 call center, a friend of mine, and I had to say, look, a cop still hasn't come. This is a missing child alert. No one's paying attention to this. It was a fight. It was a fight. Have you seen that it's a fight around in other areas too, where police just don't have that kind of capability to understand or be able to take this on?
Yeah, there's this huge prejudice, and this feeds into everything else I'm going to be talking about today. There's this huge prejudice that, nice guys or nice women aren't going to harm children. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do anything like that. Why is a child's parent going to harm them? They just miss them. Well, no. We've got to change the way we look at that. This is very serious. I work with I've gotten to meet a woman in Pennsylvania who something kind of similar. She She was very seriously abused in her marriage. She divorced. The guy still had custody. She was mostly okay with that, but like you said, he's very, very, very seriously mentally ill. And he started threatening suicide and threatening to burn the house down and all that jazz. She was supposed to pick the child up from a custody exchange. Child wasn't there. Ex wasn't there at the appointed time. Same thing. She's calling the police. The guy bludgeoned the child to death with a barbell and shot himself. And it was her father broke into the house and figured that out. I mean,
oh my God.
Yeah, there's just this deep prejudice that people who we can relate to, people who look like us, people who live in the same neighborhood we live in, who are the same race, the same economic bracket, anything, you name it, anything that we use is to identify ourselves. We tend to think the people who identify themselves in the same way are not going to be that bad of a person. They're not going to,
because you're not that bad of a person.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Words out of my mouth.
Right. And that's just basic psychology. But when you are in law enforcement, when you're in the court system, when you are trying to, become an agent of change or anything like that, you need to recognize that and you need to get over it. And you need to really immerse yourself in the statistics that this happens everywhere. And if someone is behaving in a way that implies they're dangerous for a child, you would best pay attention to that.
And it goes deeper into like the dark realm of all of this, because we can sit here on the surface and getting into that story. That's terrible what happened there. But there's a dark realm where there's child sex trafficking and there's child sexual abuse,
slavery.
Right. Is there that same thing? Is there a difference there?
Yeah. So child sex abuse is when an adult or a much older child uses a child for sexual gratification. That's the legal definition. That's the psychological definition
of sexual abuse.
Trafficking is when you add money to that. So trafficking is when somebody is providing sexual access to a child for money or something of value.
We've heard of someone that did that recently.
Yeah, it happens. It happens.
So, I mean, it seems as if child sex trafficking has been all over the news since Epstein, right? But it seems as if a lot of people take that as it's new. Is that the case here?
No, it's not. It's been around for a very long time. The term is actually kind of new, but the crime is not. A very common manifestation of child sex trafficking is kids being forced to work in prostitution. And in the
is there another kind?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody takes $200 and lets a stranger walk into their kid's bedroom and sexually abuse them, the child's not necessarily engaging in the things any of us would identify as being a prostitute.
Gotcha.
And I mean, so I would say that, but the age of consent in the United States around the time of its founding was 10. And most states allowed marriage at age of 10. Some states still do. There's been in the last
what states? You know them? Can you name them right now?
I believe Florida is one of them.
West Virginia.
West Virginia's got to be one of them. It has to be.
I'm pretty sure.
You said Florida?
Yeah. There's been a big push in the last couple of years to change it. New York, I think it was 14 up until a couple of years ago. And we changed it to 17. And then I think it just changed to 18 like last year. There's been a big flurry to change that.
Progressive.
But that's a holdover from a much earlier day when, I mean, marriage is considered a sexual institution. That's where age of consent comes in and stuff like that. And that's just a lot of it. So, there was a time when, at least under some circumstances, everyone was kind of okay with 10-year-olds being used for sex.
Golly.
Yes, and I mean there were also laws against raping them, but to do that you had to demonstrate that the victim fought as hard as they could.
Yeah.
You had to prove that?
Yes, to if someone was over the age of consent and was claiming rape, they had to
Gee.
demonstrate that. Yeah.
Don't you like this is like so crazy when you hear the laws within it, right? And then you hear how concealed like an Epstein lifestyle was, and then you go back to people like I brought up Jimmy Savile before out in
Mhm.
the UK. And you got these celebrities that are
heard
very
of 'em.
closely, you know, attached to pedophiles and other pedophiles, and then you have the Vatican itself, who is, I mean, they're egregious,
Yeah.
you know, position in pedophilia, and you can tell why it seems like it's been swept under the rug, because the people that were knocking on the door to try and get to listen and shed some light on it are the ones that's, you know, protecting the laws itself.
Or are you seeing
know?
that now they're? This is so sick to even talk about.
And it's disgusting.
It really is. The fact that they're kind of like mainstreaming pedophilia.
Yeah.
Have you been seeing that?
So most of that's just nonsense. I mean, you'll hear
It's
stuff.
academia that's doing it, though.
Well, okay, so there's a little bit more to that than meets the eye. For one thing, pedophile is actually a medical term. It referring to sexual attraction, not necessarily sexual abuse.
Okay.
There's countless videos about from academics talking about thinking about pedophilia, and they're using the term correctly. They're using it as a medical term.
Literally. they're
Yes.
Using it.
Yeah. We need to change the way we think about that. There is some truth to that, because somewhere along the line, if we can get 12, 14-year-old kids who are attracted to 4 and 5-year-old kids to put their hand up and say, hey, something's going on in my head. It's not normal. If this doesn't change, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt somebody. If we can get people to that point, we're going to be able to do a massive change and massive decrease in the amount of child sex abuse in our country. And if we can get to that point, we're going to do it without kids getting harmed. Right now, the only real mechanism we have to combat child sex abuse is to let someone molest kids and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And eventually they get caught. And then maybe they get convicted, and then maybe they serve some time, and then maybe stuff happens while they're behind bars, and after they're released, it minimizes their access to children in the future. That's better than nothing, but it's not perfect. So a lot of those lectures you'll see a lot of that academic stuff is not, there's more to it than meets the eye.
Okay.
And that's cool. There's also weirdos out there, and there's also like doctored stuff and stuff 4chan puts out that's just not legit.
Right.
But I mean, I spent 15 years lobbying for the Child Victims Act, the bill that extended the statute of limitations for child sex abuse in New York. There's no one knocking on the politicians' doors saying this is okay, change the laws to make it okay. None of that. There, groups like NAMBLA, they exist. They don't really have any power.
You've heard of NAMBLA?
Oh yeah, NAMBLA was big with Michael Jackson during that time.
Whoa! First of all,
that's kind of when they first came on the scene.
I think they've been around forever. Actually, I think.
Well, in the mainstream, when Michael Jackson was around, that's when folks started hearing about NAMBLA.
God damn it! Why you gotta keep bringing Michael Jackson to it?
I'm just saying
that's
but they were trying to use Michael Jackson as spokesperson for NAMBLA.
Yeah, they chose the wrong guy. I get it. I chose the wrong guy.
He loves kids like us.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and yeah, I mean,
don't speak to Michael Jackson on that one. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
I believe Michael Jackson. I believe he was innocent.
Do you have any insight to that? Because I'm a huge Michael Jackson.
I wouldn't be shocked if he wasn't innocent. But
I mean, there's got to be something there, obviously, right?
man.
Can you tell from your experience of being around or being in this territory?
See, Jen said MJ's innocent.
That's right.
Well, I'm a big fan of Jen Nardone as well.
Well, she said she finally caught a live show, so we should definitely acknowledge her presence.
Holla, Jen.
Right. Looks like they don't want to.
She's a freedom fighter. She's out there.
Jen be about that action.
And seeing your insight into that world, what would you say about the Michael Jackson thing?
Okay, so
without destroying my hopes and dreams and love.
I will try not to bring any tears to anybody.
It's coming already.
I will say that when people like me are trying to educate people about child sexual abuse, one of the tropes I just hear is when somebody's acting like Michael Jackson. So
you mean being a fantastic singer, dancer,
having
actor,
everybody sleep in his bedroom,
right. When just having special friends who are children is not normal. I mean,
that's not normal. You're right.
I love kids. I've worked at the camp. I've done stuff with kids, but oh my God, at the end of the day, I was happy to get rid of them. I'm like, okay,
damn kids.
Right.
Go to your mama.
Right. And that's how it's supposed to be. They're not the, you can have, I have a 17-year-old godson. There's kids in my life I have a deep relationship with. I still don't consider them my special friends. They're not the people I go to if I have a bad day at work or this, that, or the other thing. And if I have to babysit, then, you do that, and you do that in a way that works for the kids. You try not to bring them
and the parents.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So if they're babysitting, the parents are getting.
Remember, there's still the parents in a situation that allowed their kids to sleep over Michael Jackson's house. Like, that's crazy. I mean, I would sleep over Michael Jackson's house, but I'm a weirdo too, I guess.
Well, listen, maybe Michael Jackson was just super addicted to being nice to kids.
Are you kidding me? If you ever watch any interviews with Michael Jackson, his childhood was rich.
I cannot believe that this episode went to Michael Jackson.
Let me tell you this.
I would have never brought Melanie on.
Melanie talked about some of the stigma that goes along with it. And if Michael Jackson had been given the outlet that he probably needed or deserved because it would have been normalized, I think you've got a case that, maybe things might have been different.
Yeah.
I don't know if I even agree with that, but I think that's probably the connection.
Well, that's that for me. I'm like, the parents have to be held accountable, first of all, because I don't give a damn if you Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, you know what I mean? If you like
Michaels in general, watch out.
Listen, man, I want your son to stay tonight. He can sleep in my bed.
So Michael Jackson's voice automatically got deep.
I'm talking about Michael Jordan. I said Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan. That was my Michael Jordan impersonation. That was Michael Jordan. I'm a big Michael Jordan fan.
I got my Hanes right here.
Right? That's the first thing coming to my head. Like, nah, Mike.
Funny. Or is it Fruit of the Loom? I don't know.
I think it was Fruit of the Loom. No, he's Haynes. Was he Haynes? Michael Jordan is Haynes.
It doesn't matter.
It was the remember when he had the Hitler mustache in that Haynes commercial? And he got killed
on the airplane.
Yes, on the airplane. That was the word. And he was like, no, pull that.
Speaking of Hitler, bring up the no, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. So between I can't believe we're even laughing during this topic of conversation. I'm really glad we can at least
but see, the reason why this is important, because
how about you stop doing that?
The celebrity angle with pedophilia is just like you were saying, it kind of, make people feel more accepting of it. Like the whole Jeffrey Epstein case, like people really don't give a shit.
They still don't.
And
how many people took any 1 second to look into the Ghislaine Maxwell
my God.
case?
And she's
nobody.
And that hoe, right, literally was exposing even more, and it was even more information. And the thing is, they still have more information to let out. Like, so within just going back to the whole human trafficking element, the profitability of human trafficking, especially with kids, because again, this is not something that happened just 10, 20 years ago with Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell and her daddy, you know what I mean? And his affiliation with the political, realm, and also celebrities, people who have that addiction, right? Because let's face it, we put these people on a pedestal and think that they're separated for no reason.
For no reason.
Yeah, because we're dumb. But we put them on this pedestal as if they don't have these issues, and yet they have the ability to get away with it over and over and over again. They're the ones that have the money to pay for, like, people are selling their kids, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have
in Rochester.
Yes.
In Rochester,
Yes.
people are selling their
kids
that they're not putting on the news.
Yeah. All day.
It's ridiculous.
Ooh, I can't wait to get knocked up by somebody who I can sell this baby tomorrow.
Off the market.
And no one even blinks. They're more concerned with the distractions that they throw on the news every single day. I honestly think it's a more malicious and deliberate agenda, because the fact it is so profitable, and at the same time it gives these people who have power more power. They're sick individuals who are and I'm talking about the ones who are at the top of the food chain, the ones who Epstein was inviting to his island, the ones that he was
somehow did not get brought up.
How the fuck how did you get away with that shit? How? You have to have power, influence, and a lot of fucking money. And who has the most money in the world?
Bill
The
Gates.
1%, right?
I thought you were gonna go somewhere.
So let's really start knocking on some damn doors and, like, start fishing these people who, I'm telling you, there's no way Epstein was supposed to get caught. Just like when Jimmy Savile, who died, and then once he dies, all of the information comes out of the egregious, nasty, disgusting things that predator was doing on kids who could not even fight.
Were they kids or were they girls as well, like with Jeffrey Epstein?
I mean, they didn't care. It doesn't matter.
Is there a certain
men and boys and girls
kids more likely to be sex trafficked?
Girls are more likely to be sexually abused overall, but not by a huge margin. The overall prevalence estimated by the CDC for child sex abuse is 1 out of 4 girls and 1 out of 6 boys.
Wait, should we even?
Well, we don't
believe
trust
those?
anything
Can we
from the
trust those
CDC in
numbers?
this place.
Yeah, well, okay.
Fine,
so
we'll go with
let
this
me
one,
explain how those came
Plus
about.
or minus?
Let me explain how those came about.
Okay.
A cardiologist was working. I won't go into the whole story, but the cardiologist said, "Hey, I'm seeing a lot of cardiac patients who I'm trying to give them tools to get healthier, and it's not working." And when I talk to them and try to figure out why some of this stuff, and a lot of it was around weight loss, wasn't working, they're saying, "Oh, well, I was sexually abused when I was a kid. So he started asking people, and these are middle-aged people in their 60s and their 50s and their 40s, who are coming into a really good healthcare practice in San Diego. And he just started asking them, how many of you were sexually abused as kids? How many of you were physically abused as kids? How many of you had this, that, and the other thing happen to you as kids? And so these are adults. They've had plenty of time to process what happened to them. They have no earthly motivation to falsify anything, because they're not talking to a policeman. There's no chance that there's going to be any prosecution. There's no chance there's going to be any lawsuits. They're talking to their doctors.
Right.
And I mean, we tell our doctors embarrassing stuff all the time. That's part of going to the doctor. But they found when they asked people those questions, that were the statistics they got. The only other number that's even at all credible you'll see is half that, is instead of 1 out of 5 kids overall, 1 out of 10. There's some very big logic gaps in how they came up with that number. So I'm going to say, I personally do think it's 1 out of 5 kids that are, and most of that's non-commercial abuse, sexual abuse, but still horrible. And if you get to the more optimistic number, that's 10%. That's still pretty shocking. So there's a lot of pieces to this. But people who want to sexually abuse kids are very good at finding their prey. Some of them are very, very good at making their parents trust them, making their parents like them. That's some of what was going on with Michael Jackson, some of what was going on with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, some interview, I'm trying to remember who it was, some celebrity, an interview with
Ask the guy next to you. Who knows?
interview with Michael Jackson where they said they went over to his house, they brought their kids. He asked them within like 5 minutes to play with their kids and take them out of their sight. And they're like, it's something I never would have done otherwise, but
Woody
he just
Allen?
came across. he came across as the way he did it. He was just so compelling and so nice and so polite and everything like that. They just fell for it.
Not one of the Coreys?
It might have been.
I think it was probably Corey.
It might have been. It might have been. So some of them are very good at charming parents. Some of them are very good at finding parents who just don't care. They've got a lot of other stuff going. And I would never, that's a little bit of a blunt way to put it, but finding parents who are this, that, or the other.
Preoccupied?
Yeah.
Distance.
Yeah. Preoccupied. Usually not terribly well bonded with their kid and probably going through their own trauma. I mean, we talked about, we mentioned it earlier, the idea of, if Michael Jackson had a chance to heal from his childhood, his life could have been a whole lot different and very likely still be alive.
Now you're gonna make me cry.
Sorry. Okay. Well, I'm not speculating about his innocence or guilt. I'm just speculating that childhood trauma kills, which is proven.
We want to get more viewers, so we don't. Michael Jackson was innocent. I had a question for you. Yes. How worthless and how much of a worthless piece of crap of a entity is the Child Protective Services?
Hey, so okay. To be fair, I think Child Protective Services have the worst job in the world. Because
I love the fact she said, to be fair.
There is nothing.
That is a fair statement, though. I mean, it is
a tough job.
Because nobody, with the exception of a few sadists and a few sex offenders, most people who go into Child Protective Services do it because they like children and they want to help children. And they think this is a great thing. And they're going to come in on their white horse and they're going to take children out of abusive places and everyone's going to be happy. And what they don't realize is that they're usually when they come to a family, it's too late for any kind of a simple solution to ever work. So nothing they do works. If they move a child, even from a life-threatening situation, the child is probably not terribly happy about it because that's what abuse does to you. And their experienced abuse, that's a very bad thing. Now you're threatening to take a loss, which our bodies and our minds process in a similar way, on top of that horrible thing. Kids aren't good with that. Nobody's good with that. Parents aren't good with that. Nobody likes that. Even a parent who does not act in a way that's at all loving with their child, they're usually not, if somebody comes to take it away from them, they're usually not like, here, have them, because they're getting something out of that relationship, even if it's not healthy. There's still status. There's still, someone's going to ask you about that kid at some point and oh yeah, they're gone. They've been gone for the last 7 months, CPS, that's not something anyone's happy about. So CPS comes in, they have essentially two choices. Either they provide the family with services and don't think about taking the kid, or they think about taking the kid. Neither of those options are likely to work. CPS workers get very, very jaded. They get very, very burnt out. Nationally, the average tenure for a CPS worker is 9 months.
I believe it.
I've gone.
Damn.
Yeah. I've gone to heads of CPS in a lot of different places, and I've mentioned that statistic to them, and none of them have ever said it's any better than that in my county. So I still believe that statistic. I think that's pretty true. So you're talking about something that's incredibly difficult to do, and they don't have a lot of tools to do it with, and they're
just not a good group.
Yeah, it's not. They're not set up. They're not set up for success.
Well, one of the issues though that I read about CPS is, I mean, just like, you know, if you go and adopt a dog or a cat, like how well they're screening these, you know, these animal lovers, right? You could be just sending somebody to, you know, that's about to be in a dog fighting ring, right?
Oh, you got a fridge. Okay, cool. Here you go.
So one of the problems that I read about with the CPS is, you know, kids who went to new homes and then all of a sudden there's no way to track and see how well they're doing until Trump created, I guess there was a Trump bill that just came out where they're trying to create a database of tracking kids that just go missing within the CPS system,
including immigrants.
Oh, I mean, you go in there, you're getting removed, and then you're sent to some Jeffrey Epstein guy who's been adopting kids in every single state.
Right.
The story that kind of broke the momentum behind the Child Victims Act in New York was a foster parent who had molested tons and tons of kids. And yes, I mean, any place where, people usually don't get caught, so background checks are of very limited use because most sex offenders don't get caught. If they do get caught, they've already molested some kids. So someone's losing, you know, you're experiencing some pretty heavy casualties in order to even get that background check positive, if you are lucky enough to ever get that. So yes, there needs to be a lot more screening. I know that there had been, like if kids ran away from foster care or just were no longer at the foster home that they are supposed to be at, there is no one tracking that. And they are trying to do that now. That's it's by no matter means the only thing that needs to happen, but it's a good thing to happen.
Right.
How long did it take for that? How many kids have been?
It's been ongoing for.
What's your take on that situation that happened in Haiti with the Clinton aid, and they were transporting like 12 undocumented kids from Haiti? Do you know about that story?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, she's not touching that one.
So what?
No, I honestly I don't.
Well, worldwide, as far as the human trafficking side, and we're just talking about kids, but the adult side again, as far as you have adults that are smuggled through different parts of the country, told they'll get visas, and if they do X, Y, and Z. Do you see an effort there in kind of targeting that type of human trafficking?
So yeah, bringing people in for labor trafficking, that there is interest in fixing that. There's huge interest in not fixing it.
But wait, I do want to say Israel is the #1 country in the world with labor trafficking violations. Look it up. That's a fact.
That's anti-Semitism.
It is. It would be considered that because you cannot say shit against the state of Israel.
Is that for real? That is
100%. That's on the U.S. Supreme
sure not
whatever
just like war.
No. Look that up. That's part of the U.S. national report. Like they're on that.
Before I ask this question, I want to make sure anyone out there that's listening, if you have questions, put them in the comments.
Yes, please.
What are some signs that a child is being sexually exploited or sexually abused, or what should we look for?
Okay, so, and again, first of all, parents need to wrap their head around. This is very common. This is something that is very likely to happen to your kid. Nobody wants to think about that, but the more we hear it, the more maybe it's going to sink in, and we're going to be a little bit proactive about it. So any kind of a dramatic change in a kid's behavior is something to be concerned about. Now, kids grow and they change, and there can be dramatic behavior changes. And it by no means sexual abuse is by no means the only thing that can cause that.
Right. Teenagers.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. But if a kid suddenly becomes
ready for that,
If a kid suddenly becomes very depressed, very withdrawn, or very angry, it's something to ask about. It's something to talk about. It doesn't mean that's what's going on, but something bad probably did happen. Whether it's the kid has suffered some other trauma, there's something else that's really upsetting them, whether it's they're just, some mental illness is setting in. It's all bad stuff. You don't want to ignore it.
Right.
Any sudden behavior change. If a kid is saying they don't want to spend time with a particular individual, and it's incredibly rare that a kid will ever disclose and say, yeah, I was sexually abused today. I mean, that never happens.
Right. Just, I don't want to be around this. I don't want to be around that person. Or I don't want to go to that person's house. If you're going there. Okay.
Right. Or or even like if the kid is going to, even they've changed schools, or they've advanced a grade and they're in a new class. They've got a new teacher. They're going to youth sports or church group or this, that, or the other thing. Yeah. If they say, I don't like it, well, there's plenty of reasons they're not going to like it, but it's worth asking why. And I don't like it because so-and-so is making fun of me. Well, okay, that's so-and-so shouldn't be doing that, but we know something. If they can't give an answer, if the answer is just like something, they're acting like it's something big, but they can't verbalize it. That's a little more upsetting. That's something you do want to talk about some more.
They'll never say, Pastor Johnson grabbed my dick.
Yes.
They'll never say that.
Probably not.
They can only say that. Be like, damn, man, grab my balls.
Probably not.
Pastor Johnson.
Oh, it happens in those churches too.
It does.
It happens in the black churches.
Though.
Yeah.
Continue on. Sorry.
Richard.
Yeah. Richard Johnson.
So precocious sexual behavior. And this is a really, 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 really tricky one. If a kid is saying stuff or doing stuff that has sexual knowledge that is developmentally above what's normal for their age, that's really, 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 really tricky to gauge, especially in this day and age when kids have smartphones and kids have access to all kinds of videos and yada yada. And pornography's been around forever, but kids have access to it now more than they always used to. And well, they all so when I was a kid, back when dinosaurs ruled the earth, yes,
Chris Bosh.
Yeah,
pornography existed, but there were big glossy magazines and there were VHS tapes, and to watch the VHS tape, somebody had to, well, not where I grew up, but yes,
squiggly lines
in many places. Yes. But yeah, so it was something that, yes, kids could see it, but they probably weren't going to see a lot of it.
Right.
And today with smartphones, if parents aren't careful about that, they have a lot more access to
it.
So that can be a little.
And VR headsets.
Yeah.
They have VR porn now.
What?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy. I want to ask just because I look at Jen's question. It is an important question. More. Just like you're giving examples where kids that just wouldn't say or speak. This stuff happens in schools. Of a close family member of mine. It happened at a daycare center.
Jen says she knows someone as well.
Right. That's when I was pulling off the question from Jen. How can a parent, or what parameters do you think should be in place for these places, schools? Like what can they do to prevent these type of folks from coming into their schools? Because ironically, they had the porno guy.
Yeah.
The child
worked for
porn
the school.
guy. Right. He worked for the school.
Most of them are.
There was the guy in Webster who was taping the kids
Yep.
getting changed and yada yada.
Let me add to that as well. Do you also believe that should bathrooms be boys, girls, or does that not play a factor?
I don't think it makes any difference.
Okay.
Realistically. But with just keep the damn adults out of it unless they've got a reason to be there. Let's start there.
Thank you. Use your own damn bathroom.
Yeah, let's start there. But schools keeping sex offenders out, that's hard. Keeping them from wanting to get in, that's easier. So the way you do that in a school is there's absolutely, positively, everybody has to understand there is never going to be a circumstance when there's one child and one adult alone together.
Mhm.
And that is hard, and schools do not like doing that, and they complain, and parents don't. It's a big culture change for everyone, but that's the only thing that really works. Schools can do better about about like checking references when they hire a new teacher, and being like, if somebody's been at one school district for somebody's 50 years old and they've been at school district after school district after school district, and they stay at all of them for a couple of years, you might want to, and yes, they are going to come with a nice resume, and they're going to come with probably great letters of recommendation, but very often what happens is they're accused of doing something.
Mm-hmm.
The school, rather than
keep them,
deal with it,
fire them.
Yeah, well, rather,
they can't. They can't fire them.
No, they really can't. And rather than, even if they could, rather than deal with the consequences of that, rather than deal with all the blowback of that, they'll just say, "Here, I'll write you a nice letter. Just get out of here.
Get the F out of here."
Yeah,
it's like tenants. Going to the next house. Yeah, I won't say that you got evicted, but get the hell out of here.
Right.
Yeah, that's another.
So
another story.
The way there's a great video. It's on Stop Abuse Campaign's website someplace. I'm not saying this to get traffic to the site.
I'd do it.
Go ahead.
But a researcher, if I had the link, I would. But there's this.
Is it
stopabusecampaign.org.
Okay. Stopabusecampaign.org.
We've got a blog which just is basically an embedded video of this person who researches sex offenders, and she talks about one guy who was a teacher, and he talked about how he would go. That was his life. He'd work at a school, he'd get fired, he'd find another school, he'd leave, and every time.
That was his life?
Yeah, he'd spent his entire adult life abusing kids in school.
Nasty motherfucker.
Yes.
Just had to put that out there.
That's quite all right.
Yeah, there's no stopping profanity for that one. And it just it keeps. Oh my god!
But he said in this, after at some point he finally did get caught and was in prison and was talking with this researcher, and she was just kind of trying to deconstruct how he did it for all these decades. And he said when he would go to interviews in schools, they would show him around the school, and one of the things he would look for was big floor to ceiling windows, because if there were windows, that meant it would be a lot harder for him to be alone, visually alone, with no chance of being noticed, of being watched. So he would not take offers at schools that were designed like that. And ditto, if at your interview you say, we've got we're very proud of our policy about no parent, no adult, no child situations. If schools lead with that, the sex offenders are going to be a lot less likely to go there, because they realize they're probably not going to be able to do what they do without getting caught.
So large windows, no doors, cameras, and
what's funny? So
one adult, one child situations. That's the biggest thing. And of course that's expensive, and people don't like it. And there's I feel like I'm not being trusted.
So
it doesn't matter what you think.
When it comes to protecting kids from sexual abuse, yes.
Yeah, for real.
What are you gonna say, Dan? You was about to say something.
So when I was teaching, a little personal anecdote, a couple of years ago in a high school, I was very about not being alone. One, because I was on, first year probation, essentially. It's like everything's viewed. But as a younger, I should say, male teacher.
Very good looking male teacher.
High school. Well, at one point, I'd like to think so. But I was very aware of that. So I would never, ever be alone with a student. My door was always open. But what's weird about that is I would watch several other predominantly female teachers do the opposite.
Oh, the female teachers be getting it.
Have we been seeing that more? Like, is that really happening more? Because I feel as though it's out there, and then it seems like it's like very sexualized. Like it's
I
like, holy cow, that's a hot teacher.
I don't think it's happening more. I think
That's
people are
weird.
talking about it and recognizing
agree.
it
Okay.
more. And yes, that is.
And social media is catching them.
Well, social media is catching them sometimes because some schools are kind of getting the stuff we're talking about, and some are implementing stuff faster than others.
Right.
Some schools are getting it. In Texas, they passed a law that all teachers had to take like a 2-hour class about child sex abuse. And what happened was the instances of child sex abuse reported in Texas schools skyrocketed for years after that. And there are a lot of stories about female teachers molesting kids came out of that. I don't think, and no reasonable person thinks, that teachers are like, oh yeah, I should do that. But what came out of the classes was more recognition.
Yeah.
And teachers were
seeing the signs.
Right, exactly. And then as teachers understand the signs, administrators understand the signs.
Yeah.
A very logical thing to come out of that is, gee, we should probably have policies about this, about reporting and about whistleblowing and about all this stuff to keep ourselves from getting our butts handed to us in a lawsuit.
So speaking of the signs, then what should you do if you're worried that a child, is being sexually exploited?
Okay, so it depends on if you have a relationship with a kid or a relationship with a situation. If it's your kid or a kid you have a good relationship with, you can talk to them. You can, depending on what reasons you believe what's going on. If it's something like a drastic change in the child's mood or behavior, you can say, hey, I see you seem a lot more angry. What's going on? Has anything happened in school? It is a really good idea to talk with kids from a very young age about sexual anatomy. You don't need to go into masses of details about where babies come from, but at least, they should know the right words for their genitals. You can talk about that, and talk about child sex abuse. And there's tons of books out there. There's tons of videos out there. There's lots and lots of information about how to do this in an age appropriate way. It doesn't need to be scary to kids. And I've never, ever seen a kid get scared from having just an intelligent conversation about it. Kids don't understand why this is like a life change, why being touched in a certain way is going to be a life-changing trauma. And that's good. That they shouldn't have to ever worry about that. No kid should.
Right.
But talking about it isn't going to scare them. But you should talk about it. Make sure they at least have that kind of vocabulary. And at some point, so what is bothering you? You are more angry. Has anything happened to you? Has anyone touched you in a way that's inappropriate? Has anything like that happen? Just you can offer it as a list of options. If the kid says yes, you need to immediately enlist authorities, because if the conversation goes much further than that, it's going to get really bad from a law enforcement point of view. If what you know is a situation for a child, you don't know the child themselves that much, but you're a pediatrician and you're seeing something that's indicative of abuse, or you are, you're seeing stuff that depends on what you're seeing. And, at that point, if you're a mandated reporter, you probably want to report it. As imperfect as that is, that's first of all what the law says you have to do. And second of all, and you can try to offer support. You can try to offer services. You can try to see if that child is going to talk with you. See what happens. If nothing else, even if the child doesn't say anything, even if you don't feel that you had a satisfying conversation, somewhere in the back of that kid's mind, they're going to remember that someone took the time to talk with them, to try to ask. It's better than nothing. The worst thing that can happen to a kid who's being sexually abused is to feel like no one believes them or no one cares. That's the absolute worst. Anything other than that is a tiny little bit of one tiny little therapeutic, helpful, good intervention in a whole sea of bad.
It's a whole lot of bad out there with this.
Yeah, it is.
This stuff doesn't make the news at all.
Nope.
And I think that people are sleeping on
Well,
it.
you can't do it when the CEO of the president of Disney is touching kids too. The hell can you do?
Well, here's something else. So
I didn't know that.
the media, nobody wants to talk about. So media knows if they accuse somebody of child sex abuse, they're going to get, and it cannot be proven. They're going to get their butt suit off, and that's been demonstrated. So they don't want to talk about it unless it's absolutely unless it can absolutely get proven in a court of law or with some other similar overwhelming massive documentation. Only about 10% of offenders ever get caught.
Oh my God.
So
that's a disparaging.
Yeah, it is. And so that is, which is again is why whatever, this isn't just a law enforcement thing. This is something, there's got to be a lot of solutions on the table.
Let's go through the questions there, see if we missed anything. First of all, the comment of the night, Patricia killed it with the you guys' podcast. The next conversation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
She definitely
VR
next
options.
week on Pop Culture Partisans VR options.
I was looking
That's
up that
pretty good.
show that
a teacher.
it's with Kate Mara. I think she was in House of Cards, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you add it to your Netflix?
I had never heard of it before.
Can we put in somewhere we can
in the J-Lo movie?
We can have like a 2-hour podcast or something.
Right.
We just be talking.
We can do whatever we want.
I mean,
we gotta pay this young gentleman.
yeah, I know, right?
But
I would totally wish.
Jen on there saying she's sending her son with a hidden camera.
Yeah,
I'm with it.
Yeah,
shit will change around these parts.
Well,
boy.
I mean, I know Jen personally. I know that she's involved, and if she's seeing this in her child, there's got to be a lot more parents out there that are like, "What the hell's going on with my child? What's happening here?"
And there can be a lot of different things, but it is something that it is a common one. It is something people need to be mindful of,
right?
And so often,
just to see the warning signs of,
right? Exactly.
And that's what we needed this episode for.
Yeah.
Was to talk about the warning signs, to talk about what what to look out for. What are the options for when you do suspect it? Do you call 911? Do you call your organization? What are the next steps?
So if a child says they've been abused, or they say something that you think about that, or if you're seeing physical evidence or any horrible thing like that, you call 911. You do not call CPS, because CPS, among the many other things they're limited in doing,
don't call CPS. I'm so glad I threw them on the bus. People don't know how fucked up the CPS is, but I'm glad you dropped that dime on them.
But just one thing most people don't even know about CPS. If a kid is being sexually abused by a teacher or someone other than someone who doesn't live in their house, CPS has no jurisdiction. So if you talk with CPS about that, they're going to call the police if they remember to, and if somebody gets around to it, and then it's at best it's like the children's game of telephone. You told information to somebody who's telling it to somebody else, and just don't do that. Call the police. Police are responsible for stuff that's going on right now. Yeah, stuff that's going on in the present tense. Right. In Monroe County, in most of New York State, if there's concerns the child is being sexually abused, the police officer will not ask them a lot of questions, but they will schedule an interview with Bavona Child Advocacy Center. And throughout most of the state, kids have access to a child advocacy center. They're going to be interviewed in a very trauma-informed way. They're going to be interviewed by someone who's trained in this. This is the kind of thing adults think it's going to be absolutely horrible, and all the stuff we've ever heard about, reliving that and everything. It's not, it's a little more complex than that. And the people who work at child advocacy centers are pretty good at that. And they do it in a way that's not going to ruin the kid's life. And when, to talk about that kind of stuff, there's elements to it that start the healing process. And they can be networked with services there and stuff like that. The other nice thing about it, about having a kid interviewed at the Child Advocacy Center, is that they are only going to be interviewed once, and there's going to be a police officer behind that glass door, behind like a one-way mirror, and there's going to be, if the kid is saying they're being abused by someone in their family, if it's relevant to have CPS in there, CPS will be there, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone who needs to be there will be there and will be able to get what they need to get out of one single interview, rather than having the kid potentially talk to a police officer, talk to a different police officer. Oops, we thought we got the jurisdiction wrong. Sorry, you've got to talk to the state police. Now you got to talk to the DA. Now, which is how it used to be like 20, 30 years ago. So that's why child advocacy centers exist, and that's what they do. And they're not perfect. Nothing is, but it's a much better way for a kid to disclose. And again, these are people who know what they're doing. They're going to interview a child in a way that if law enforcement does take the case up, it's not going to be picked apart, which used to happen all the time. And that's why if your kid, heaven forbid, or a kid you know and care about is disclosing, it's not your job to interview them. It's not your job to get a lot of details, because if you start doing that, you're not the trained expert, and anything that is said in that context will be used against you in a court of law, or will be used against the case in the court of law, which is really unfortunate, but that's how it goes.
So one last question before I end this, just your professional input here. Did Epstein kill himself?
Okay. First of all, I've joked about that I would only say this if like some kind of like a closed circumstance where people were donating to RCAD or the Stop Abuse campaign. This is my theory, and let me explain how I grew up in the infamous prison town of Attica.
Shit.
I grew up listening to people talk about doing really, 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 really horrible things to people who are behind bars. And a lot of, when I was in college, one of my professors said he taught in Attica, and he's like, about a third of the inmates and the guards could trade places and the world wouldn't be any different. And I largely agree with that. It takes, just like, you don't always have the best element of society that wants to work with kids. You don't always have the best element of society that wants to work in corrections, especially that. So what I think, here's the other thing to keep in mind about Epstein that is educating my speculation. This is just speculation. I don't have any inside knowledge. None of it. So if he did name all the names, if somehow people got, not a single one of them was facing criminal charges because of the statute of limitations on child sex abuse in New York.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's the social aspect of it.
There is, but really nothing much happens about that. People think it does. Like, someone looked at politicians who got named during Me Too. Almost all of them got reelected. The only one who didn't was Jeffrey Klein, and that was, he had an awful lot going against him. Yeah. Weinstein got named.
Weinstein.
Yes. He got hired right away. We name people. There's a little bit of there's a little bit of shame and a little bit of stuff that goes on with it, but it's not going to change anything because because we still want the same actors in making movies.
It's
we still
our fault.
Want the same people investing our money. I mean, if I had a financial planner, I'm not going to know who the heck they are. They get named in connection with Epstein, I'm not going to know, and I'm not going to divest myself of their services because
they're making you money.
Right, exactly. And again, I have to even remember who the hell they are. So honestly, what I think happened with Epstein was some guards were survivors. They thought he was a scumbag. They put him in a situation where either they tried to coerce him into killing himself or they did hang him, which is what some of the medical evidence is looking like. I don't think anyone paid them any money. I don't think, because again, none of these people were facing criminal charges. Whereas if you do the substantial amount of work you have to do to identify someone at the correctional facility who's going to have access and do. I mean, that you're exposing yourself to liability.
Right.
They had nothing to lose, and these people were rich. They could have certainly talked to a lawyer and asked them, "Hey, this is going on. Do I have anything to worry about?" I think some guards took it on themselves. That's
a pretty good explanation. I'll give you that one then. I'll leave that one alone for next time. But I appreciate you coming
bring
on.
Her back again.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate RCAT allowing you to come on, and it is your founding organization, so it is you. But I appreciate you. I appreciate all the information you gave us. I know a lot of people out there got some good information, and stay blessed. All right, keep doing a great job. And if you ever, for some reason, come across probably John Leguizamo, maybe not Kanye, because he would never do anything crazy like that. Let him know we're trying to get a hold of him to come on the podcast. Awesome. Hit that funky music.
Yeah.